The following program is made possible by Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
He has served San Mateo County at every level of government for nearly 3 decades.
State Senator Jerry Hill is here. The game is politics. The game is on.
Hi, I'm Kevin Mullen.
And I'm Mark Simon. Welcome to the game.
He is known for being everywhere, greeting each of his constituents with a contagious, upbeat energy, and for a legislative record that is never far from the concerns and needs of the people he represents, whether it's health care or consumer protections. He is most widely known for his tough scrutiny of PG&E, first following the tragic pipeline explosion in San Bruno, and more recently in the utility's responsibility for the wildfires that have devastated the lives of so many Californians.
Jerry Hill was elected to the San Mateo City Council in 1991. You should know.
I was 91, I know.
Then the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors in 1998, the State Assembly in 2008, and the State Senate in 2012.
Perfect.
He is turned out of office. He's turned out of office. He's leaving office in 2020. Jerry, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mark.
Let's plunge right in and talk about PG&E, the bankruptcy.
Sure.
What should happen next? Should they break up? Should we find some way to keep PG&E intact?
Well, I think what we're seeing is, unfortunately, kind of a shame on capitalism a little bit, because the business model of PG&E as a for-profit company is what has caused all of the problems. Since the last breakup in bankruptcy, not breakup, but the bankruptcy in 2001, their focus became the bottom line. That was their priority, not safety, and their culture has shifted that way and stayed that way. And that's why we see the diversion of funds from maintenance and safety to profits. And that doesn't work today in a utility model. So I think breaking them up in some forms, splitting them. San Francisco is interested in taking over their infrastructure. San Jose, I've heard of the same thing. A lot of areas are. So that may be the answer at the end of the day. But it looks like they are going to definitely go into bankruptcy. And there's another example. They're not interested in what's in the best interest of California or the ratepayers or the victims of the fires last year. They're interested in what's best for them. And that's the corporate model that we see. And bankruptcy is not really in the best interest of everyone in the state, but it is in their best interest.
We meaning the people of California,
we mean the people.
Huge bailout.
Well, there was a bailout voted on last year, yes.
Yeah, should they retain that if they're going into bankruptcy?
Well, no, I don't believe they should. I don't think they should have any benefits, because bankruptcy protects them from all of those and every liability. And they do have the ability then to raise about $5 billion, because they got a line of credit this week that will give them that money if they declare bankruptcy. So it's in their interest.
So if you were to crystal ball this, you think a breakup is the most sort of logical conclusion of how all of this plays out? And would that be imposed by a bankruptcy judge? What role would the legislature play, where I serve with you, Jerry? What do you expect will happen as this rolls out, as the bankruptcy plays out?
Well, as the bankruptcy plays out, there will be a lot of pulls and pushes, and the court will make a lot of recommendations on splitting, the gas division from the electric division, which I think is the healthiest way of doing it. But where this is different than another bankruptcy and every other type of federal bankruptcy you see, is at the end of the day, any solution or restructuring or settlement in bankruptcy has to go to the Public Utilities Commission for approval. And if they approve that, we can, as the legislature, Kevin, we can force the PUC to include in that settlement benefits for victims, a splitting of PG&E and some ways of doing that. So we will have control at the end of the day, whereas other bankruptcies, the referee and the judge makes the decision. So there is a role for us down the road.
Is it, so they split up. Does that address the question you had Are they all going to be for-profit organizations then, or should they all be shifted to some sort of public utility nonprofit status?
Well, I never thought I'd say it, but I think they should be. I mean, ideally, they should be a public utility. Whether a city, we have Sacramento SMUD in Sacramento. Palo Alto is a publicly owned municipal utility, and I think that is the answer. There are some interests that in Sacramento that are not state government, but are governmental, that are interested in taking over PG&E, buying it. So I think that shifts, and every public utility has cheaper rates, more reliability, and a much safer system. So I think the residents, and what the governor has been saying is, he wants a reliable, safe utility. He could get that with a public utility.
So impact on the ratepayers is a primary concern, obviously. What I've also heard is concern about how California meets its climate change goals. We've got these very aggressive benchmarks and goals, and PG&E is a major player in that conversation. How do we ensure that California stays on track to meet our clean energy goals over time, given all of this volatility now with this major entity in Northern California?
Well, and that is a major issue, and that's why the environmental community was supportive of the bailout last year, because they didn't want bankruptcy to jeopardize the contracts that a lot of these renewable energy companies have with PG&E. In fact, some of them are almost in bankruptcy now because they can't borrow money because all their contracts are with PG&E that will be void in bankruptcy. So I think what we have to do is step back and use, here again, the approval at the end of the day by the PUC and the legislature's authority in that, by us requiring those contracts, requiring whatever entity comes out of bankruptcy to maintain those goals that the legislature has established for PG&E and for the state, to make sure that we follow those, because they're not more expensive than other. In fact, they're cheaper and less expensive than the old historic legacy contracts that PG&E has purchase agreements for that are costing us a lot more today. Those will also be void at the end of in bankruptcy.
You first got involved in wrangling with PG&E over the pipeline explosion in San Bruno. Where did all this go wrong? PG&E for decades was a fairly reliable, it was a great investment because its stock was sound, but it really wasn't a for-profit in the sense that it was driven by the desire for profit. CEO and upper executive salaries ballooned in the last several years. It was usually a modest level of income for the people who ran the place. Where did it go off the rails? Well,
what I've learned is it was after the energy crisis of 2000. When that occurred and we had the deregulation, and then outside corporate forces, the Enrons, started impacting and involving PG&E, and then the bankruptcy in 2001, what PG&E did was shifted their interest and what they felt as a corporate citizen, that they had to look at profits. It had to become more of a Wall Street approach than a safety consumer approach. The CEOs then became former CFOs became the CEOs in the future, and that's where we've seen the focus shift. So it looks like it was right at around 2000 when they shifted their culture, their interests, and their needs to a more corporate for-profit.
We're going to take a quick break. You stick around and you do the same. We'll be right back.
It's been over 150 years since Wells Fargo first opened for business. Since then, we've enjoyed your community support, and we're passionate about returning it. Every day, Wells Fargo team members roll up their sleeves and donate their time to organizations and charitable groups throughout the Bay Area. Nationally, we've committed even more. In just the past 2 years alone, we've donated over $70 million to support schools and educational programs. It's a commitment we're proud of. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
Back. I'm Mark Simon. He's Kevin Mullen, and over here is State Senator Jerry Hill. Let's talk a little bit about what does everybody talk about around here? Traffic and housing. Let's start with traffic, transportation, transit. You were on both of the major transit boards in this county. It's always been an important issue to you. Is traffic going to get better around here? There's a lot of projects in the pipeline, plus the voters just approved a half-cent sales tax to pay for more projects and more programs. Do you think things are going to get better? Is there light at the end of the tunnel?
I don't believe they'll get better soon. I mean, it's going to be many years, and as long as we keep hearing monthly that the jobs, we're increasing jobs in the peninsula and in Silicon Valley, you know, the more jobs we don't have more housing. So those people are living elsewhere, driving here every morning. So I don't see a quick solution, but I like some of the plans that are in place. Certainly, you know, electrification of Caltrain, the managed lanes on 101, I think will make an improvement and opportunities for people if we can do something with the Dumbarton corridor. And that'll be good. And the 92-101, you know, that interchange, because that is really the bottleneck. And the interesting thing is it was 25 years ago, probably 22 years ago, when we looked at the congestion management plan running out in the future. Everything was going to work better, but that interchange was not going to improve over time, and it proved out correctly.
So there have been a series of funding measures, Senate Bill 1, which both you and I were involved with at the state level, Regional Measure 3, which was the toll increase, the half-cent sales tax, Measure W. So a series of funding measures, state, regional, local. There is discussion around a 8-cent sales tax for Caltrain. I know you're involved in that discussion, a leader of that discussion. Is that going to happen? And now we're hearing discussion of what's being called a mega measure, a regional measure, which I'm not sure that the public has the appetite for all of these different funding mechanisms. But where do we go from here in terms of additional revenue streams for Caltrain, and then maybe looking Bay Area wide at something?
Well, I think it goes to the whole heart of taxation in California, and I know you've been very interested in some type of tax reform for the state in general, because people are, I believe, struggling with tax fatigue. And we've passed so many measures in the peninsula. I hope the Caltrain measure does go on the ballot in 2020. I think it's important. The 8-cent sales tax will provide a much better, consistent stream of income for Caltrain.
Dedicated to Caltrain.
Dedicated for Caltrain, so we won't have the different counties kind of fighting over that. And it's really critical because Caltrain is the spine. It is the backbone right now of transit, since we didn't approve BART many years ago and are paying a price for that continually. I think that it's necessary to do that. But I frankly think that there is considerable fatigue for taxation now, and especially if there's a slip in the economy, it'll be tough.
You didn't support Measure W, which barely passed.
Right.
Probably would have passed by a lot more had you supported it.
Of course.
Is that why you stayed off of Prop W, or Measure W, because you thought there was some tax fatigue, or were there other issues?
I stayed off of Measure W because I followed the process from the beginning to end. It started, frankly, from my point of view, what the polling showed, what people were saying, and then what the measure included were two different things. Mm-hmm. And I think that the conversation started with an agenda and with a planned measure to go on the ballot, and it was mainly to support the bus system of Samtrans, and that did not poll strongly at all. People were not interested in doing that, but at the end of the day, the measure shows with 50% of the money going to basically the bus system. And so what we were getting was not what the people wanted, and it was just, I believe, not handled properly. And that's why I could not support that, because it wasn't really representing what the people wanted.
Yeah. Shift gears a little bit to the other easy subject, which is housing. Kevin, you were talking about the mega regional measure for transportation. There is a different kind of measure, which is to try essentially and impose housing building standards, not standards, but almost quotas. You have to meet a certain amount. Even the governor has talked about maybe holding the gas tax hostage. There's no question there's a housing crisis, and no question there's a jobs housing imbalance. But you come from local government. I would imagine the idea that the region's going to tell your city how much housing to build doesn't sit well with you. Well,
it doesn't, because each city in the peninsula is different. I mean, the cities that we represent, Kevin, as you know, each one is unique. And I guess you could say that almost everywhere, but I don't know if you can. If you take the Central Valley, most of those cities are just one after another, and they're pretty similar in terms of geography, demographics. But here we have a completely different picture. And what I'm interested in is to try to find out, how some of the legislation in Sacramento and some of the regional issues that are coming about, how will that affect a Belmont? How will that affect a San Carlos? How will that affect a Redwood City? What is it going to look like on the ground if that measure were to pass? And then that's going to really determine for me how I'm going to support it in the future. I mean, I think we need to do something, but in some cases it will destroy or change the character of some of the cities that we have.
Because it is going to come to you guys as a piece of legislation.
Yes, it will. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I applaud the governor for making this a top-level issue. Unlike Governor Brown, who signed 15 housing bills into law but didn't really make it a priority. So I applaud Gavin Newsom for taking the issue. There is pushback, though, on the notion of holding back transportation funds unless certain housing goals are met. Lots of resistance locally. I'm not sure how that works if you don't do something like restore redevelopment agencies for local government.
Well, that was the question
which is a major tool.
Why not reinstate redevelopment?
It's something I've signed on
well,
to.
I mean, I like the idea of redevelopment, but as you know, the reason it was eliminated was because those dollars that go into redevelopment agencies come from schools, they come from education, and they come from city government, they come from county government, they come from state government. So that prevents some of the other services that people want. But it's nice to have a dedicated source for housing, and as we know, redevelopment had 20% of those dollars had to go to it, which I think is important.
Yeah. We're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back. Stick around.
It's been over 150 years since Wells Fargo first opened for business. Since then, we've enjoyed your community support, and we're passionate about returning it. Every day, Wells Fargo team members roll up their sleeves and donate their time to organizations and charitable groups throughout the Bay Area. Nationally, we've committed even more. In just the past 2 years alone, we've donated over $70 million to support schools and educational programs. It's a commitment we're proud of. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
Welcome back to the game. I'm Mark Simon. He's Kevin Mullen, and over here is State Senator Jerry Hill. This is going by very quickly, so I want to get into a couple of things. Yes. And if there's some time left, we'll get into some other issues. But this is your last 2 years in office.
It is.
Everybody who leaves a job tries to finish on a high note. So what do you kind of hope these last 2 years will mean for you legislatively and in terms of your impact on the community?
Well, I hope that the work that we've been doing in Sacramento and locally has benefited the community and has been, and we've got more of the same over the next couple of years. Unfortunately, looking at our utility and PG&E, that seems to be a focus. My history goes back, and sitting on my desk in Sacramento are the names of those 8 who lost their lives
in San Bruno.
And I can't lose sight of that or focus on that, and I have that has kind of dominated a lot of my thoughts to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And here, I don't think it will in the gas system, but certainly the electric part of their company has done that.
So what's next for you? You're in great shape, you got tons of energy, you've got this depth of experience over decades. What do you want to do next?
You know, I don't know. And I think it's a little scary. It's kind of exciting, not having a plan. As you know, when you grow up and get older, there's always this trajectory. You know, there's always opportunity. There are always options that are available to you, not necessarily planned, and now there isn't anything. So it's a little exciting and a little scary, and maybe there'll be nothing. That's not a problem either.
Could you see yourself running for still another office?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I frankly, and Kevin, I know, sees it as well as I'm a little cynical now about politics, the money in politics, the influence of that money in politics, and the decision-making that goes around that money in the legislature. It's in a lot of ways disgusting.
Well, it's a little hard to imagine you sitting on a front porch whittling, learning to play guitar or something. So
well, I've always wanted to go back and play the violin, so maybe I'll do that.
Let's talk a little bit over the 3 decades you've been involved in office. How is the county different? How has it changed? Because it is a different place, and some of the housing issues, traffic issues are increased pressure for it to change and maybe become a little less suburban, a little more urban.
Well, it has certainly over the 30 years almost that I've been doing it. I think this county, when you look at other counties around the state, is the best run of any. And what we've been able to do is keep the politics out, mainly of the county and of county government. I've always admired and I was kind of disappointed that we went to district elections. I mean, I see the value, the need, and the necessity for it, and it's the right thing to do for certain reasons. But now we have county supervisors, in some cases I've heard, I only care what's going on in my district. I've got to protect that. I've got to bring the money there. I mean, when I was a county supervisor, I represented San Mateo and Belmont. In Foster City, but I had to be just as concerned about what happened in Pescadero or Half Moon Bay, because they could vote for me or not as well. They were my bosses as well, and that, I think, is important for how we look at issues. Yeah. And that's why this county is run so well, is because of that. So I hope we don't lose that.
So what's been the most satisfying job? My father was a former assemblyman and said there's no better job than being the mayor, because people know who the mayor is, and you see the direct line of connection between your advocacy and your passion and your work. But you've served lots of different roles. What's been most heartening or satisfying? Is this
Well, the most
state Senate, being in the majority in the state Senate is the top of the line?
I would say it is for me in the ability to actually change lives. I mean, I look at the legislation we've done over the last few years, and I feel, I mean, whether it's in the drunk driving arena or the gas and safety arena, or I mean, there are party buses that we've been able to. I mean, you'd never hear of a party bus accident or death now related to some of those things. And I mean, to me, it is the state Senate has been in the legislature, because you can actually change. And
being in the majority, you get bills heard,
and
they get voted on, and you're affecting 40 million people.
Right, right. And so that's it. But being mayor was probably the best place, because everyone knows who the mayor is. Even though in this county, not many have any more authority than anybody else or power, but people don't know that, and they always want to talk to the mayor.
In my online column, I've been railing on the question of whether the county is going to lose some regional authority. It's going to district elections, so it's going more local. Mm-hmm. You see CASA, you see a number of other areas where the region is starting to act more as a region. Is there a risk that San Mateo County becomes sort of overrun or pass through? I mean,
we've always been that way,
yeah.
As you know. I mean, 30 years ago, we were, you had Santa Clara County and you had San Francisco, and we were always the stepchild in between. And we still are. I mean, for a lot of reasons. We've got San Francisco's airport, and we have their watershed up in the north. So, I mean, in the west. So we're that way. And there was an idea in the mid-90s by Willie Brown to form more regional governments. And so I think this is not a new idea, but I think as the issues transcend county lines and borders, as it's transportation and other things and housing, we need to do it as a more regional approach, and I think that's coming.
So, we create the mayor of San Mateo County,
and
it combines the perfect title with the new job.
Well, that's the issue, and I've heard you say this, that the problem for San Mateo County and its ability to assert itself is it doesn't have a mayor.
It doesn't have a mayor.
So how does the county assert itself? Because as these regional powers grow, you know better than I do, it's going to tilt towards San Francisco and San Jose, because they're sort of the heavyweights at either end.
You're right. You've got Oakland as well. I mean, you've got those three that are really capturing the energy and all the air in the room, mainly when something happens. So, it would be nice to have a person in San Mateo County who could represent and be that spokesperson. I mean, as we rotate the president of the Board of Supervisors annually, that's more of a figurehead position, as we know. I think that's almost necessary. But then, as we get into more regional governance, those cities will do. It's just like in Santa Clara County, San Jose sucks all the air out of the room, and those other cities are always concerned about that, and I think rightly so. We do need to figure out a way to get that voice.
Well, even a conversation I had with the new governor, he talked about how he has support of the mayors, San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, and I had to remind him. Of course, he's a smart guy. He knows how this works. But, suburban mayors may be viewing his policies in a very different way than the big urban mayors. And he gets all those nuances. It's nice to remind.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, the thing is, they have to be reminded. We're running short on time. You didn't start off thinking you were going to be in public office. This is something that you got involved in because of a local issue as a resident. And now, almost 30 years later, what has public service meant?
Well, it's meant everything to me. It's something that I've learned. I mean, I always before in college and civics and government was always important. But then when you get to do something and actually affect the change that improves people's lives, I mean, there's nothing better or sweeter than that in someone's life. I mean, when I ran for the city council, I remember I got elected. I said, 12 years, that was the term limits. After 12, I'll go home and go back to business and stop. But it just it's addictive in a way, and it's very seductive in a lot of ways. But it also gives you the value of being able to make change, and I always like to make life better for my family or my daughter or my wife, whatever it is. And this allows you to do that for the community as a whole.
Jerry Hill, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mark.
I think we're going to 2 years from now, when you're at the very end, I think we'll have you back on one more time. We'll help people prepare for your obituary. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm Mark Simon.
And I'm Kevin Mullen.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on The Game.